So the US and Israel has just started a war on Iran, but you senior only want to know how the stock market and your portfolio will do on Monday. So whether the market will crash and your wife starts scolding you for investing, or how much the market will crash on Monday. So in this video, let's find out what happens to the stock market when an invasion or war happens, and what are the 1 day, 1 week, and 1 year returns after a war erupts. And let's discuss what are some of the possible outcomes of the war and to the stock market. So when missiles start flying, the stock market actually follows a pretty consistent 3-phase cycle. Phase 1, the panic phase. So according to LPL Financial, typically when a missile starts to fly, the typical 1 day return is negative 1.1%. So perhaps you can expect a drop of 1 to 2% on Monday. So this is the phase where typically the flight to safety happens. So you can also expect gold, silver, and generally the oil stocks to rise. And typically, your defense companies like your Palantir, Lockheed Martin, and Raytheon to go up. You can also expect investors to dump your typical tech stocks like Meta, Tesla, Microsoft, and Nvidia, and also your growth stocks like iron, and typically small cap stocks. Airlines will probably also plunge on Monday. So in phase 2, it is the digestion phase. So 1 or 2 weeks in, the market searches for direction. So the questions to answer is how big is the conflict, and whether the conflict will stay in one country or it will become a regional warfare. What are implications on oil prices and on inflation? But surprisingly, markets only tend to drop around 4.7% from the start of the conflict to the absolute bottom. And in phase 3, the recovery. So while the drawdown and the recovery time largely depends on the scale of the war, the average time for the market bottom to happen was only 19 days. And the average time to recover all the losses was just 42 days. So surprisingly, stock markets historically held up very well during geopolitical tensions. In fact, if you look at how markets held up after major events, on average, the market rises 9.2% post-events if there was no recession that happens. So you can see that the market hates uncertainty, but it loves a resolution. So what are some scenarios that can happen in the US, Israel, and Iran conflict? So if the leader of Iran dies, you can expect extreme volatility on Monday. This is because the world will feel a dead hand or nothing to lose strike, or nuclear escalation. The market will also be searching for who is the next leader. So whenever you chop off a snake's head, the body wriggles without a direction. So who exactly will take over Iran? However, if Iran opens up after so many years, the markets may like the regime change long term and the markets may rally after the initial drop. In scenario 2, Iran fully shuts off the Strait of Hormuz. So roughly 20% of the world's oil pass through the Strait of Hormuz, which is just a 21-mile wide choke point. So if Iran does a dead hand operation and deploys many sea mines in the area, global supply chains may be interrupted. You'll probably see your oil stocks like XOM and CVX to skyrocket. And you can also expect the S&P 500 to crash quite badly. And in scenario 3, the war becomes a full regional war. So Iran actually fired missiles into Abu Dhabi, Doha, Qatar, UAE, and Bahrain, which is totally insane even though they said they only targeted US bases. But if you think about it logically, would you accept missiles flying over your airspace and not condemn or do anything about it? And I believe there are also some civilians killed due to the booster drop-off and the debris from the missiles being engaged by defense systems. So while I think that the retaliatory actions by Iran was totally insane, you piece off 5 more countries instead of just 1, I highly doubt Iran will continue escalating this, as its top generals and top leaders are already dead. So what are some things to monitor, right? So the first thing is oil prices. So oil prices technically affects everything, especially inflation and how willing is the Fed ready to cut. And second is how Arab states will respond to their civilians dying. Hopefully, they will just send a few letters and call it a day. And lastly, who is the next leader that will take over? So this one is my personal opinion and speculation. So with the midterms looming, right, and Trump cares deeply about the stock market, in my humble opinion, he wants to finish every item or agenda that appears bad to him. So I believe he will clear all the doubts and uncertainty by June and elect a Fed governor that will cut interest rates. Then Trump can also say how he solved how many wars and brag about how he tear down Iran's tyrant regime and to allow the market to boom. So what if the Russia and Ukraine war gets a fix and the Iran war ends? Supreme Court ruling on tariff already done. So Trump can only implement the new tariff for 150 days. So what if the tariffs are gone also? Every single obstacle or uncertainty that the market hates and the algorithm absolutely hates will be eliminated. So what will happen to the market if that happens? And we take a look at Bitcoin now, right? It does not give a shit about the war. It has already recovered from the drop. What if we are already in the recovery phase and that the market has certainty now that the war has started? The market is already looking at what happens next. So Trump has still 2 days to close out a deal or tone down the warfare or by Monday market open. So will he tone down? And what will happen at the Strait of Hormuz? Let's discuss down below. And you have not watched the video on how to invest in 2026, you can click the link here.